what is the core issue, Mr. Bhargav? I mean, if you can speak candidly, I mean, is it a work culture issue? Is it a technology transfer issue? What is it between
it's a
which is
number
the
of issues.
dividing line between the public and the private sector?
See, there are various aspects. First is the legal aspect. Working as a public sector company, you are an instrument of state in terms of the Constitution, which means all the fundamental rights can be enforced against you. People can take you to court for giving a contract or hiring a guy or doing almost any business decision. Like we were taken to court for having a manufacturer's quota and how that manufacturer's quota was being utilized to allot cars. So that is one part of it. Then because you're a public sector, you have to comply with a whole lot of government rules and regulations. You're under supervisory jurisdiction of a number of people. Your audit is done by the CAG, which is very different from really a commercial audit, where procedure becomes more important than the results, where time has really no value. And so all these things happen which make it difficult to work. Then there is the question of government control. Even though theoretically a PSU is a board-managed company, in practice it is not, because the fact that government is the appointing authority of the CMD and the directors, that is always in the background of people and their decision-making and their approach to government requests of various kinds and such things. So you don't have that. The whole question of incentives, accountability, and motivation is very different in a government company and a private company. So with all these factors, I am convinced that in terms of the basic structure of public sector companies and the way they have to be managed and the compliance issues and the legal issues, the public sector companies are heavily weighted to not perform as well as private sector companies.
That's very interesting coming from you, Mr. Bhargav. So if you were in the finance minister's shoes today, would you say that it makes sense, to eminent sense, to actually go for privatization of most industries where the government has large companies, barring a few?
Oh, absolutely. The issues are not the economic issues. There are political issues in privatization which are important. There are the issues of unions and managing the unions and the labor problems which are issues. If it's pure economics where one didn't have to look at the other aspects, I think government would privatize immediately. But unfortunately in our country that's not always possible.
Now, you know, your journey started 40 years ago, but the turf, as you said, was very different. You were the first car manufacturer. There was no competition. In a sense, you were a monopoly. I mean, 40 years later, you were a giant of a brand with billions of dollars of cash in your portfolio. However, the turf has changed. I mean, the market is very competitive right now. But do you think today Maruti at 40 faces a very different kind of challenge going forward, which is surviving and maintaining its salience in a very competitive scenario?
We've had competition quite a long time. You know, the car industry was delicensed in 1993. After that, global companies have started entering India, and particularly from around 97, 98 onwards, in the next few years, almost every global car company has been in India. So competition from the best in the world has always been there. The nature of competition is changing because and has changed from time to time. It was originally, the first challenge came when diesel became a very major fuel which people preferred. So petrol versus diesel became a competitive point in the industry. Then now we have seen that with the way the car prices have gone because of regulations and state government taxes and such things, cost factors have become more and more important. Now technology is changing and that is bringing new elements into competition. The SUV market has become another factor in the competition. So the conditions are changing. The factors which are determining where you have to compete and how you have to compete are changing. And I think this will continue all the time. This is not an industry where you can sit back and say, now things are stable, I have to do nothing further.